Hello, this is Ashley Smith. I'm the mayor for Canyon City, and I'd like to call to order our Vision Committee meeting for February 17th, 2021. Today, we will be talking about some topics that I'm pretty excited about, and that's the future of the old Constantinos property, Skyline Steel, and the clock tower. But first, we'll start with roll call, please.
Councilmember Dennehy.
Here.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Jaquez.
Here.
Councilmember Meisner. Absent. Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Councilmember B. Smith.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Here.
Mayor Smith.
Here. And I will note that Councilmember Meisner should be here shortly. He's coming in after work. And that means we will have a full council. That's pretty exciting. Have everyone here. Ryan, do we turn the time over to you first? Or?
Yeah, I'm happy to get us started. Between the end of 2018 and middle of 2019, the city bought 3 properties: the Clock Tower, Constantinos, and Skyline Steel. And we had some delays because of COVID, but we are continuing to move along with all of these projects. Obviously, Constantinos, we did the cleanup on that site right away from a physical standpoint, but there were a lot of property line adjustments and things like that that needed to happen. And we're very close to the end of that process right now. And then Skyline Steel, there was some time delays there getting the Skyline Steel business relocated. They had to take some consideration for themselves to move their business to Penrose. And then, of course, the clock tower, we've talked during budget sessions on what to do with the clock tower, and we're going to bring some ideas forward here tonight. So let's start with Constantinos. And Adam, do you want to give an update on where we are with lot line adjustments and what that process is looking like and where we can go?
Sure. So the only thing that is left for that process is the completion of the condemnation for the 2 extra pieces of property that no one was claiming. Basically is the west end of our parking lot. And so that is working its way through the legal system. And we're hoping within a month that's wrapped up, I'd say 2 at the most. And then we can finalize that lot line adjustment, and then we'll have 2 clean legal pieces of property, one being the City Hall property and the other being the developable piece that was Constantinos.
So once we have those 2 separate parcels and we've got the Constantinos lots as ready for development, Rick will be working on putting together an RFP or an RFQ requesting proposals for development of that site. And Rick, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that process.
Yeah, sure. It's a process. We're using Buxton to determine what might be a good match for that location. Specifically businesses. When we talk about what types of matches, we really need to look at what we want to have in that location. It's a gateway. It's a gateway to the community, and it's a beautiful little spot that could be great for just a really nice looking facility. So I'm taking that and going with that to determine what types of businesses might be good fits there, and then we can use the Buxton data to find good matches for those. And I've already begun that process. There's a couple of businesses that I've got in the back of my mind that would be good there. One is a restaurant. One is more of an outfitter type of an outdoor type of a business. And using the Buxton data to narrow down whether they would be a good match in our community. The beautiful thing about this is that it will give us, Buxton in particular will give us a report that we can send to that company to show that we are a good match. It's not just something that we say, we think you'd be really good here. It will show that it's a good match. So we see it as really one of those gateway type of lots that would be just a beautiful spot for something that could transition people downtown. So that's basically what we're looking at. But that would have to be an RFQ or RFP process. We wouldn't be able to go to just somebody and say, we want you to move here. Since it's city property, we would put that out for a proposal or request for qualifications for somebody with their own ideas, and then we can review what they've got in mind.
Any questions from council? Dolly?
Well, when we're talking about rezoning, isn't that doesn't it help that we own that property? We could help rezone it before it's sold. Okay.
And it's central business district, right? Is that the zone? for that?
It's actually general commercial
General
now.
commercial now?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, the size of the property is just a little over 1 acre, I believe, which makes it a little difficult for some retailers, some businesses, but there are some that will fit that footprint and generate some tax in that area.
One of the things that we're doing with the lot line adjustment is we are going to include a fair amount of the property that's now the open ditch. So the developer will have the option to work with the ditch company and possibly pipe a portion of that ditch where they could use the surface, which now there's a lot of that area right now that's unusable as is.
Mhm. And what were you saying that would need to be rezoned to?
It wouldn't necessarily, well, we'd probably want to go central business district, I would think, but that would be a discussion yet to come.
Yeah, I think, it would depend on the type of developments. Central Business District doesn't have any parking requirements right now. So, being that close to the highway, you may want to have some parking requirements and, be part of general commercial. So there's, lots of considerations, but I think the message tonight is that's probably going to be the first piece that will be ready to be put out and see developments on, at least private development on.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Thank you. So actually two questions. Is there any virtue in waiting until our master plan and zoning recode, development recode is completed or substantially complete before putting this out on the market?
I think, we're kind of targeting that, we're probably a couple months away from putting it out on the market. We'll have a really good idea of a rough draft of what the zoning and new regulations are going to look like here in a couple of months. So I think the timing will probably align because you're not going to have an immediate sale as soon as you put it on the market, as much as I would like that.
And that leads to my second question, which is how maybe you can, Rick, talk to us a little bit about the process that would be used to seek a company. I mean, how do you go about that? How do you try to find the right investor with the right idea to develop something like this?
Network. Network basically is a good start. I'm working with one developer who works primarily restaurants. That actually Adam referred him to me. He's really tied into a lot of different developers as well. So that's really the gist of it. The information that we get from Buxton, we can go back to Buxton. A lot of times these companies are using Buxton themselves, and we can work with Buxton to generate contacts. The matches that they sent us 20 matches with the contract. Those matches have contact information of the developers, of basically real estate people in those companies, so we can make direct contact to those companies if we like. We also have contacts with preferred builders of a rather noted grocery store that people like around here that has not come to town yet, but they also work with other retailers as well. So if they're a preferred builder for this company, they would be a preferred builder for other companies, and that's another side of the network to reach out to. And we'd be hitting all of those
Thank you.
directions.
Councilmember Reed.
Brian touched on it a little bit, but so for the turnaround time to be able to get from this point to narrowing it down to being able to get an RFP out there, how much longer do you think we're talking? Assuming I understand what Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick is talking about as far as the master plan piece, but assuming that's not a component, like we obviously had to hold the land a little bit longer than we were originally planning on because of
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah, so some of it had to do with COVID. Some of it were lot lines that we weren't expecting, and some of those different things like that needed to be cleaned up on the title side. Really, it's we're waiting for it to go through the legal process, and we're expecting 60 to 90 days.
Perfect. That's helpful. I just want to see it get from being land to generating income.
Yeah. Yeah, the other possible roadblock, I guess you could say, is the companies that I'm contacting now for open space, for vacant space downtown, they're really hesitant to do anything right now. Qdoba in particular, I think I mentioned this, I don't know if I mentioned it here or where, but I contacted Qdoba and got a response, but the response was that the person that I contacted was let go because they're not doing any more development because of COVID. And that's been a couple of companies. So there could be some hesitation there. Half of the battle, I think, will be working with people that, anybody that we know in the network to find out who is doing something right now and who would make the most sense to contact right now to get the process going. Because it's been a little frustrating contacting these places and they're just like, no, not yet. We're not ready to look. We're not ready to think about it. Or they've got their priorities in another part of the country or something like that. So could be a hesitation. Hopefully it won't be. We'll try to steer it so it's not.
And I just have one more question, if that's okay. I thought had talked about us maybe contacting the ditch company and piping that, or am I wrong? Because Adam just mentioned that the developer would probably be the one that contacted them for doing that. I thought that was something that we mentioned at the prior meeting of us working with the ditch company beforehand.
Yeah, I think, we were talking about it in concept, but not necessarily the city doing it, but
Okay.
as part of the overall project.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Oh, Mandy hit on one of my questions. Thank you. And then also, I know it's not a blighted area, or it might be, I don't know. Would URA be available for a new development like that?
Yes.
Excuse me.
Yes, it would be.
Yeah.
So all of these properties are within the urban renewal district. So, new construction, I think, you probably have to be about $25 a square foot, in that area to actually warrant new construction. And,
Okay.
a lot of the existing rents are much lower than that. So, there's definitely going to be a gap there when it comes to some of that new development, especially with restaurants who might be hesitant because of COVID. Trying to close that gap will certainly be something that urban renewal could potentially help with.
Yeah, that'd be a good selling point.
It's some of the reality of development. This developer that Adam referred to me, he and I are talking about possibly, we're trying to get a clothing store here. Trying to get a clothing store here. This clothing store doesn't pay more than like $7 a square foot. Communities are giving them the space, basically. Retailers, or owners are giving them the space so they can generate sales tax. So that might be an opportunity, some way to fill a gap with urban renewal. And that's what he's talking to me about, using tax increment to help finance this. It's down the road, but that's kind of the reality of competition with other communities.
Councilmember Jaquez.
Taking into consideration what the master plan has for the other side of the highway, with all the development we're looking at over there with regards to housing and all this other stuff. When you go looking, or people come to you about that particular piece of property and everything, is your emphasis going to be kind of guided with regards to how that would fit in with our master plan for the further development, and also with regards to our master plan as it deals with the venues that we're looking at with regards to improving the downtown area? Because sooner or later, and this would probably be the toughest thing down the roadway, sooner or later, somebody's going to come up and be made, hopefully, somebody will come up and be serious about whether it's a restaurant, whether it's this or that. And then at that point, I think that's where, with regards to your position and everything else, looking at all this other infrastructures that I mentioned, and then the continued development of that property, what right now do you feel would be the best interest for businesses taken everything I said into consideration for that location? I know that's a tough question, but, you know,
It's a loaded
that's,
question.
well, yeah, but see, that's why you get the big bucks, you know,
That's,
so you can
yeah,
answer those questions.
that's a different meeting, yeah. Yeah, everything that I look at is taking the other plans into consideration. And the developer that I'm working with already has those plans already, so he's got an idea of what we're looking at, including the Highway 50 access. Ryan and I talk about probably that and Skyline more than anything, what would be a good fit. And that's probably one of the most difficult positions, one of the most difficult lots, just because it's a gateway into this community. So really, it's not a matter of going out and finding anybody. It's a matter of going out and finding somebody that's going to fit the plans and fit what we think would be a good entry to the city. And it's kind of complicated, really.
And that's part of the reason why we're looking for RFPs and RFQs is because, you know, we have our own ideas, but we want to see what other people's ideas are too. There might be something better that we haven't thought of that can go onto that site and be a benefit for the community. And that's really what we're going to try and evaluate through this process.
And if we can control it to the point where we bring in what we would like to see there, then great. I mean, I would hate to say that somebody's going to come along and say they want to buy it. We're going to have one investor and it's going to be something we don't want to have. You know, we may have to be willing to say no to somebody. But this one in particular, it's a good first step to get, well, for me, obviously, because I'm, you know, other than COVID, what have we done? You know, what have I done? But it's a good first step to really transition the Western corridor, Highway 50 corridor, into Main Street. You know, and our whole focus is not just small business, it's foot traffic on Main Street. It's to get people down on Main Street. That's where you've got the most tax potential, revenue potential is on Main Street. And I'm not discounting any small business anywhere else in the community, but you know, we have a heart for downtown and we want to get people downtown.
Well, I appreciate what you're looking at, but the one word you said a little while ago was the most encouraging word for me, is that you'd be willing to say no if it doesn't fit. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Smith.
No, my question was kind of in line with something you touched on, was with the Highway 50 access plan, especially on this west side of town. It seems like CDOT's making everything a right turn. And because it is a gateway property, is there going to be a left turn into that?
I don't think there's any.
Actually, our
plans to
approved
change
plan calls for a signal at this intersection.
Signal, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Prime access, yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've done a lot of traveling when I was working, and one of the things going to different cities that I always enjoyed was finding a unique restaurant or a business to a community and going in and seeing what they've got or enjoying the dining options that they offer there. It would seem to me that if all the language that we've been using about a gateway, business to our community and things like that would kind of, in a way, rule out the chains. Although not necessarily, because there certainly can be chains that might be really beneficial for downtown as a whole, and a magnet, because that's really what we're talking about. But so I realize I'm just one voice on council, but that would be my advice, is to be as creative as we can to get something unique to us there. If we can do that at all, if we have any ability to steer that in that direction, that'd be really great. Thank you.
But before COVID, we had some discussions with some local business owners and local restaurants who had some interest in opening another restaurant or something along those lines. We'll have to revisit some of those conversations, but again, you need that. In most of those circumstances, you needed a third party that was actually going to build the building and then would lease to that restaurant. So But absolutely, we don't disagree with those comments at all.
All right, do you need any other direction from council?
I do not.
All right, well, we appreciate the update. I know I'm glad that we're back on track to having these conversations. It's been a while since we had the excitement of tearing Constantino's down. I mean, that was one of the best days of my being on council, and and then the next best day we'll be seeing something go up. So that'll be awesome. Let's move on to Skyline Steel.
So with Skyline Steel, we still have Acorn Petroleum out at the sites. We've been having discussions with Acorn Petroleum about potentially relocating them. And I imagine that discussion will come to council probably in the near future to have some additional discussion about that and potential negotiations. When it comes to Skyline Steel, this site was a key site for as a catalyst project for the riverfront developments. And the things that we've looked at and discussions that we've had with some developers tend to lead down the path of some type of hotel restaurant combo. Before COVID, we had a hotel developer that was interested in the site. We had, I think we still have some interest from another hotel developer that's potentially interested in the site. Again, we would be looking to put an RFP out there. It does not necessarily have to be a hotel. I've been approached by folks who are interested in putting condos or some type of mixed use development down there where you have, maybe some more small footprint or restaurants and storefronts down there with condos up above. But those are certainly some of the options, and those were contemplated when we did the riverfront zoning district. Adam, do you have an update on anything? We've got some EPA stuff that's going on down there, and
Sure. So in our brownfields grant, we unfortunately didn't get covered the asbestos mitigation or inspection for the steel buildings, just the office building, which is clean of anything like that. So we are trying to get some additional assistance from the state to go ahead and look at the steel buildings, and then we can get a demolition permit and put that out to bid, which we hope to do soon this year. The sewer main installation, which will service our property and the ice plant property to the east, is starting. That construction starting this week and should wrap up within a month and a half or so. And then the only other note is that we are working with Acorn on some possible mitigations for some underground contamination. So we're working with the state and their contractor in doing some monitoring there on our property. And so what that leads to is still yet to be seen.
Rick, it's a very similar story as far as Buxton goes, working with Buxton again, trying to find potential partners there. Buxton, outside of the 20 matches they provided to us, they work with several hotel chains, and they've had some discussions and are willing to put us in touch with some of their contacts when it comes to hotel chains for potential development there along the river. Rick, anything you want to add to that?
Just the next steps for the property, other than the sewer going in, we still have to do an environmental cleanup. If you're part of a couple of you were a part of the EPA meeting we had last fall. The multi-purpose grant that we applied for to clean up partially just that site and some other possible cleanup areas. We find out April probably whether we'll be awarded that funding. If we are not awarded that funding, then we go to a targeted brownfield assessment, we'd have to contact EPA to find out how we're going to take care of that assessment, that cleanup. But hopefully the brownfield grant will be awarded and we'll be able to clean up that property pretty quickly. As long as we've got phase 1 and 2 done, which we do, we had that done through the Coalition Brownfield Assessment Grant, then all it is a matter of cleanup and we can make that property available. Like Brian said, we're talking to Acorn, trying to come up with some creative ways to move them off of the property. They know very well that we want to move them off the property. And hopefully with that'll all come about together and we can get this project going forward. We're looking at, like Ryan said, hotels. The developer I'm talking to also is connected to hotels and they're interested in it, in the property. There's definitely some pushback in the community that hotels shouldn't be there, but you know, it's one of those beautiful, beautiful locations. We've got some people in the audience today who are very river oriented and river recreation oriented, and they would like to see it tie in very nicely with recreation on the river. I totally agree with that. So,
Councilmember Dennehy.
Thank you. I just have, you know, this is just going back to the ground and the contamination there. I've had the privilege of talking to some of the workers who have worked at Skyline Steel for, you know, I did a lot of dealings with them, but I've talked to them even since. And from what I'm here, that there could be some, you know, quite a bit of contamination there. Is there any preliminary on that, Adam, or?
Yeah, really, it's from my review, there's actually not much. It's very, as far as our property is concerned, it's very minimal. The larger issue is the spill from Acorn and how extensive that is. And until we get some monitoring installed to find out, it may or not be a big deal.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Perfect timing, because my question has to do with that as well. Typically, I thought, Ryan, in the past that before we purchased a property, we did some sort of assessment on it. Did we not do that?
We
prior
did
to purchase?
we did phase 1 and phase 2 on this.
And what did you kind of explained it, Rick,
Yeah.
but what did that include again? Phase 1 and 2?
phase 1 is going to be, phase 1 really looks at the history of the property, what was on that property.
Sure.
Throughout the life of the property to determine what might be there. And then phase 2 did some drilling to determine what they did find there. Stantec was the consulting company that did it. They're the brownfield consultants that we have. And they didn't find a lot of contamination out there. They were pretty pleased with what they found. The bigger question mark, like Adam said,
Sure.
is what's at Acorn right now.
So then,
And
I'm
that
sorry.
would not, I'm sorry, and that would not be our responsibility to clean up either.
Okay,
That would be
okay.
theirs.
All right. So then my next question is, with the asbestos, then that's in the existing building, if they're, well, we still need to have that tested, correct, before those are torn down?
So there is no asbestos. The problem is we have to go through
You have to do it.
the government red tape stuff.
Okay.
So you have to do an analysis, which costs money,
Uh-huh.
and to prove that there is none. We did that for the office building, and there is no asbestos in the building. The steel buildings, which are just made of steel, we know don't have asbestos, but we have to have someone who's qualified to do so to analyze that and sign their name to it. And that's the part we're working on with the state. Rather than us have to pay for that, we're trying to get them to do that for us for free.
That clears that up.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
If
Okay.
we had known that we were going to have to jump through those extra hoops, we would have just included it with the office
Yep.
buildings. But you know, they were just metal buildings, so we didn't think that they'd have to go through that.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Meisner.
Dolly and Adam answered my question in regards to the liability with the issues at Acorn. It's going to be their long-term liability.
Yes, and that's something that the state's aware of, and they're working with them on it, and already that's moving forward.
All right, well, let's hear from our citizens' request to speak to council. We will start with Martin Welch. If you can please come to the microphone. Yeah, sure. We will start with Christopher Moffett. And when you come to the mic, it's okay to take your mask off since you'll be televised.
Hi, everybody. How's it going? I'm Chris Moffett. I'm president of Royal Gorge River Initiative Organization. We used to be WKRP. We're the organization that brought you the Whitewater Festival and all the river improvements in town with help from the city, of course, and other people. since we're talking about Skyline Steel, we have a vision for the river in Skyline Steel that we just started working on actually. So we figured we'd present it here today. We just got basically a rough draft of what we're working on a couple days ago. And I have maps. If you guys are interested, I can, I don't know, throw them at you, make paper airplanes or something. You guys want them real quick? Okay. Cool.
Okay, go ahead and hand them to, yeah, Cindy will take them and distribute them for you.
All right. And real quick, I'm just gonna short history since I'm introducing Royal Gorge Rio for the first time tonight. I just want to say that we were represented initially by WKRP. We have a 501c3 pending right now. And I'm here on behalf of all the members of RG Rio. That's Will Colin, Beth Katchmar, Larry Otto, Amanda Mills, Luke Miller, Martin Chandler, Warren Hart, and me, Chris Moffitt. Will Colin started our project. Larry Otto, Beth Katchmar, Mike Marlino formed what would become WKRP. We got substantial donations from Bruce and Susie Bell. And all the plans for the river corridor were funded by WKRP initially, and they're on the city's page. So, you know, these plans are years old and we've been a part of it since day one. Steve Roby wrote our first grant, and this has been a grassroots effort since day one. You know, we started the Whitewater Festival, and thousands of volunteer hours and hundreds of thousands of dollars have gone into this. You know, every time someone buys a beer at the Whitewater Festival, they're supporting the river. So we're pretty proud of the Whitewater Festival. We are now, yep, RG Rio, and we have our youth rafting team, which is the men's under 19 national champions. We were gonna make a bigger deal out of that, but COVID killed our trip to China. We've been working with the life jacket program with the city, and we've also been doing public service announcements, trying to keep people safe in the river. And so I just want to point out, you know, without all our volunteers, we wouldn't be able to come up here and talk about what we want to do with the river. So we're very proud of that. The map you have in front of you is called the RG Rio River Surf Project. And basically, we're looking at putting a stand-up paddleboard wave or two, depending on how the engineering comes back. Basically, you know, across the river, right by where you're talking about developing, putting a hotel or whatever in there. And I mean, as this project develops, great selling point, having a whitewater feature there for people to look out their hotel window at people playing in the wave. The type of wave we're looking at is a very friendly feature that will be very good for stand-up paddle boards. That's the emphasis of this one, is just stand-up paddle boarding. So before, when we had our projects, we weren't able to work on the bank. This thing's telling me I gotta quit talking or something. It's blinking at me. Anyway, before we weren't able to work on the bank over there because Skyline Steel wouldn't let us over there, but now we can do some riverbank remediation, make it more friendly for people to come down, stand next to the river, safer, things of that nature. So we're excited that the city owns Skyline Steel now. When you look at the map, you can see we also have proposed on there. I'm pulling up my map on my phone. We have proposed a North Bank River Trail, and our two surf waves are both going to be stand-up paddleboard waves, and then our riverbank improvements. So yeah, excited that the town owns it. Very excited. So
We have a question from Councilmember Gonzalez.
yes.
Hi, thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, yeah, so my question is, isn't there something similar to this in Salida and Buena Vista?
There is something similar to this all over the country. And there are some waves that are known throughout the whitewater community that people literally travel from everywhere in the country to go to. One of them being in Montrose, is that correct, Martin? And then there's one in like Oklahoma City, places you wouldn't expect there to be waves. And the focus on stand-up paddleboard features has really brought people to rivers. Kayaking's great, whitewater rafting's great, but stand-up paddleboarding is much more palatable for the general public and gives them the ability to participate in whitewater sports better. So.
Okay, and then my next question is, well, I guess these kind of go together. So it looks like it's going to take up most of the river from side to side. How would this impede in current river rafting?
It would not impede it. It would make it more fun to go through town. What happens when we do this is we look for old, basically we take old pieces of metal, old stuff that's on the river shore that is not good for rafting, not good for kids to be near. And we put in those steps.
Okay.
And that makes it so that, everyone can enjoy the river. And also the wave, it makes it so it's more fun to tube through town. I mean, our plan for the river goes all the way up to Pink House, basically the exit of the gorge. And there's still sections we need to work on through there that have pieces of metal in the river or dangerous stuff for your youth and everybody who tubes through town. So this is just a good thing. Yeah, it's gets old industry stuff out of there. So
My question is about cost and timeline.
well, that's our question too. We are currently looking at getting engineering companies to look at this as well. This is our proposal that we're sending out to engineering companies so we can start getting a ballpark on it. So once we get the ballpark on price, we can know how much money we need to raise, and that, sets our timeline basically. Our primary source of funding right now are grants in the Whitewater Festival. So COVID has really hit us hard because all the grants are matching grants, and we just used all our money on the most recent park improvements. So that's where we're at.
Okay, Councilmember Dennehy.
Well, first, I want to say thank you. You guys have done a fantastic job. And the river is beautiful, and I know that's a collaboration between parties, but and I think this is a great idea. And I'm going to ask, this is kind of a two-part question. First off, Ryan, is this all, would the city want to have or see a lot of this all done before anything, we even do anything with Skyline property? As far as the riverbank?
Yeah, that might be more of a question for Adam as far as getting into the river and access.
Well, I mean, I know you can get into the river. I mean, they can get in and go up the river. I know that. But
yeah, I mean, I think for sure that whatever developer we pick, they're going to want to be involved in what this looks like. Again, if you're talking about some of these other locations we talked about, accessibility is a big thing. So how much and how close are their buildings to what we want, to happen down there? And there's a little bit, there's some floodplain issues that we can work through, but I don't know that we definitely need to do them all together in mind, but not necessarily concurrently.
okay, no, it's that's. And then my next question would be,
Yes.
just since we are talking about the Skyline Still property as well, to see if you've heard anything that that you would like fundamentally, because you've been here a long time, you've seen this.
I personally, WKRP would really, and RG Rio would like the river corridor to be better. I want a park, so I'm not going to win my, I would like for a nice piece of grass to sit on and eat watermelon and look at the river with my kids. But, I know it's going to be development, and I know that's what's going to happen. And we just want to be a part of the conversation when that happens. So, when there is riverbank work that's going to be done, I know that when you build a big building, you have to make sure the engineering works with the soils over there. The type of riverbank improvements that we do, we can all talk and make sure that we are doing it with what's in mind for the future, be it a 10-story hotel. I don't know what's going on, but yeah.
Okay, thanks. And again, thank you again for all you guys have done.
Sure, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to point out that the idea of the proposed North Bank River Trail, that's really incorporated in the zoning that we established for riverfront properties along there, and that has been, I think, a concept in front of council for quite a while. It's not so much a trail as a walkway in front of hopefully what we would look at as hotels or restaurants, and some perhaps further down housing. And so we've got that in mind also. I would just point out that this property does have the benefit, if you look at it that way, that the irrigation ditch does clip the corner of it. And so that would act as a kind of a natural flush. And I would point out that probably past contamination of a property was much more of a problem at the Clark Station, which really turned out to be pretty clean in terms of groundwater. And I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't find the same thing here because of natural flushing and having a ditch right there to drive that natural flushing. And so what you've mentioned, riverbank cleanup, in your view, what would that be? Would that be just removing a lot of the concrete that's down there, or what are you guys thinking about?
Yeah, it's basically doing like the city, or like we've done already through the river in the city. Basically wherever we can, you put the rocks in there instead of the old riprap that they just used to throw on the side. And those rocks, stop erosion, keep the bank the way we want it, make it so you can go stand down there with a fishing pole, or get in the river, or do whatever you want to do. So
thanks.
Yep.
Councilmember Meisner.
Thanks, Chris. Hey, I was one of those guys that put in some of those hours at the WKRP.
Awesome. Sorry, I didn't mention you.
Oh, no, that's fine. My only concern, I'm going to call it concern, is that we've got two developments happening, and we're talking about engineering. And every time I hear about engineering, I get a little apprehensive, because you start doing engineering and pay for engineering, and then if you've got to go back and change it, everybody starts squirming. But I'm kind of like John, that trail there, I don't remember what that map looked like before, whether this overlapped that or.
Basically, yeah. And really, this is just a proposal, this isn't our concrete final draft. So, but we, the trails, just so people can walk and look.
He needs to go up there.
Yeah, I have it pulled up. But if you Google Canyon City Centennial Park Master Plan, you'll find it, and it's on here.
Is it similar?
Mhm.
Trail?
Yeah. Although I do think ours is a little bit, because we went down there once, Ryan, with Dana and John Paul Airy, the owner, and it did sound like it would be a little bit more of a wider trail that was ADA accessible, and would have park benches and things like that as well. We do have another question from Councilmember Reed.
Thanks for coming, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
One of the things that I appreciate about you guys being here is that we really have to rely on you guys to kind of be the experts in this area, because you've devoted so much of your time to it. So I appreciate that. I do think that it's important that as we continue to talk about these developments, that we are able to continue to partner together, because there's no dispute over the work that you guys have done. Better than what we could come up with here as council and trying to figure those things out. So some of my questions were already touched on as far as how it impacts the rafting piece, but that makes sense that still goes through, which is exciting. I guess my request to you guys would be just that as this continues to come up across us, that we all keep having these discussions and working together. If you do start to narrow this down, since this is a proposal, I'd be very curious to hear what some of your engineering numbers and things like that come back as they do. And so I guess my hope is just that it can be a continuous conversation. I think this plan sounds amazing, and it is really exciting. So I think it's cool that all the people you mentioned, and then you as well, like, we've all grown up here. So the river is a huge part of who we are and the identity of our town. And so it excites me to be able to talk about development, but still respecting what makes Canyon City so special. Because we don't want to just overdevelop the river corridor in a way where you're just looking at water,
Right.
but where we can interact with it, because that's something that is so special about the Arkansas Valley. So I just appreciate the time and effort that you guys have put into this. And I just hope we can continue to have the conversation here and in other places too.
And that's why we're here really is we want to make sure that we are a part of the conversation whenever you guys start to determine what you want to do with that property, and make sure we are all working cohesively because yeah, we're all on the same team. So
Thanks so much.
thank you.
Yes, thank you. Now we'd like to invite Martin to come up and address council as well.
All the information. So I'm Martin Welch. I'm a resident here in Canyon City as well, and a whitewater enthusiast, but I'm coming here with kind of two hats today. First is as a member of RG Rio, and these guys have been great, and I've had a privilege of being a part of that. And but really, what I've had the most privilege of is just having fun down at the existing whitewater park for the last couple seasons. And I mean, go down there is what I would suggest. Go down there on a summer afternoon and see all the kids and see the life jackets being ripped off of the loaner station and kids just splashing around. I mean, this was with COVID. It was busy down there. And in a safe way. I mean, the police were patrolling down there, but what you saw were families and you know, someone was always on the wave doing something. The main wave that's kind of right across from the ice house, and so really that's been really fantastic. And you know, I've lived in the community for about 25 years, and in the last couple years, I've really seen this become, you know, a true river outdoor recreation spot that you don't have to go pay $150 for a Royal Gorge rafting trip or something. You can throw your board in your car, you can go down the river, and you can meet people and hang out. And that's the kind of community that people want to spend a lot of money to be in. And that's what we've seen over in Salida. So, you know, I think that this next project is an essential piece to bring our whitewater park up on par with the parks that, like the councilwoman mentioned, and Salida, Buena Vista, and even Montrose. These parks have statewide, national, and even international attention. You can read about these parks in Salida and Buena Vista and all kinds of, you know, whitewater publications and things like that. The biggest thing for those park improvements, that's going to start to bring some legitimate, you know, professional, semi-professional, whatever, competitors to the events, big sponsors, big prize money, and it can start to be a legitimate, I'm using that word a lot, it start to be a really, you know, something that would, again, draw big manufacturers, big sponsors that bring that money and that recognition along with them. That's what needs to happen to the park for that to happen. River surfing is one of the biggest growing sports in the country. I'd encourage, again, all of you, go home or do it right now on your phone, go on Instagram, hashtag river surfing, and just see what comes up. And you'll see stuff from Canyon City on there, but you'll see a lot of Salida, a lot of Montrose, and it's a huge sport all over the world. I mean, there's waves in Germany, there's waves all over the place. So, you know, we have an opportunity to put ourselves on par with some of those places. And, you know, this I think is a big piece of that. You know, also, some of you may know, but I'm also a real estate appraiser. I've appraised, you know, property in this area for over 20 years. My company is Sound Appraisal Services. And, you know, what on that end, what I've also seen, that area of town around Centennial Park, Southwest Canyon, you know, used to be one of the most undervalued, kind of depressed areas in the city. When I first started appraising there, it was pretty rough over there. I don't know if any of you guys remember that. And like all neighborhoods in Canyon City, there can be some questionable spots here and there. But what you're seeing now is people buying property over there specifically because it's near Centennial Park, specifically because it's near downtown, because it's near, you know, and I just want to give props to Rex Brady and Jesse Young and all the guys at the Parks and Recs Department who have, you know, really had a vision for that. And again, I remember when that park, Centennial Park, had a steel slide out there that was about 300 degrees in the middle of the day. And that was it. And just those park improvements again, and we see that starts to drive property values. And that is a something that's not necessarily driven by commercial properties. That's something that recreational opportunities like that, like parks and things like the Whitewater Park and things, that's I see more of a driver of property values than being near. I mean, I heard but near a clothing store. I've never heard someone say, I really bought this house because I wanted to be near that clothing store. You know, it's really because I want to be near that park or that trail system. And so, you know, what I've heard, I've talked to buyers, you know, the South Canyon trails, the you know, even the connection to Skyline Drive and the Riverwalk and all those things have some really palpable effect on that particular area of Southwest Canyon. Again, is one of the where you've seen a lot of appreciation over there because of that. So, you know, that's kind of the role I envision, you know, for the local government. And I think that's what I'm hearing here today. You guys are looking for developers that are going to benefit the community in that. And I guess my only take would be, you know, whether it's a hotel or whatever. I mean, you know, Mr. Lancaster mentioned, you know, developer would want to have input in what's going on. I think that's absolutely right. But I think also that the city has a fantastic opportunity to put requirements on a developer to allow for greenbelt space or access to the river. That's a common thing in most big cities. You know, most big developers that go in with a project are often obligated to, you know, designate a certain area for the public. And I think you guys have a great opportunity to do that with this project that could tie in really nice with the Whitewater Park. And I think most developers that have that and see what we have here would be completely on board with that. So I would say whatever happens with Skyline Steel, whatever does go in there, that the Whitewater Park improvements are a must if we want to see Canyon City become not only a surfing destination, but that is the kind of thing that can spawn entire industries. So in Salida, we have Badfish stand-up paddleboards. So I don't know if you guys have heard of that company. They're an internationally known company. They travel all over. They have one of the best known teams. His son, Miles Harvey, that is one of the founder's sons, is a world champion. And that all came out of Salida. And we could have a company like that here in 5-10 years. We could have, you know, a Canyon City local grown company that employs people and manufactures, you know, they don't manufacture the boards in Salida, but they have their warehouse there. But I'm just saying, we don't, you know, it can also spawn, like I said, rental business, surf lessons, you know, lots of jobs can come from something like that. So it's not just for us hippies to go down there and splash around, and it can actually have some significant economic benefits too. So I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, Martin. I do have something from Councilmember Gonzalez.
Oh, sure.
You know what, all I was going to say, thank you for being here, and everything that when I pushed my button, you hadn't said what you'd said in your closing statements. I was just going to kind of talk about what you talked about in your closing statements about jobs, about bringing in other infrastructure and different means of capitalization. So
sure.
Thank you. That's all I had to say.
Well, thank you.
Thank you also for being here and for the work in the river that the Rio has done. I'll say another equally great moment in my time serving Canyon City is being down at the river this summer and watching all those families and kids loving the new improvements, including my own family too. We spent a lot of time down there and it was so awesome. Would love to see these improvements move forward. And don't forget, when you're talking about fundraising and matching grants, that Canyon City was also one of those major funders for those park improvements. And
yeah,
you can see that that's an investment that pays off.
We really know that. I mean, we talk about it all the time, how great the city and the Parks Department, everything's been to work with, and we really appreciate what you guys do as well. Thank you.
So, Ryan, I do have a question though, because the North Riverbank Trail, I mean, that is on our master plan as well. Is that something that we can go ahead and start looking into? I mean, I know that while we have ownership of Skyline Steel, one of the purposes was we can do what we want with it, what we need to do with it without having to impede on private property owners. And this is our opportunity to make these things happen.
Yeah, and that's, that's part of, like we're doing the lot line adjustments for Constantino's, we'll do something similar with the Skyline Steel property as well, because, this, previous councils, the goal was for the city to own the land along the river and be able to control that for the purposes of those river walks and those public amenities. And so before we put it out to bid, we will make sure that we've got all those property lines cleaned up and addressed.
Thank you. And I would like to see even just access to the river on the north side, as, sooner than later if we can, but I can recognize that we probably need a developer. If we're ready to move on, let's go ahead and go to the Clock Tower Plaza.
All right, now I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to steal any of Tom's thunder. The Clock Tower parking lot, in the short term, we're utilizing it for parking purposes. But in the master plans, both the Centennial Park Master Plan and the River Corridor Master Plan, it calls for being part of that piece that ties downtown to the river. And as we continue to look for different ways to utilize that property, Tom and Rick have come up with some really innovative ideas, and I will hand it over to you now to do your presentation.
Sure. Tom Dixon, Small Business Manager. Thanks for giving me a few minutes of your time. This is a proposal sort of called Canyon Village. The idea here is to create both a downtown destination, a place for visitors and residents to relax, enjoy the downtown space, but also, we really want to be able to maximize the use of all of our space. And so looking at a way that we can help bring new businesses downtown, help some of our micro businesses, our smallest businesses, kind of get a foot in the door and really see how they can develop their idea, their business without taking major risks. And I have control of this, don't I? Maybe. Oh, no.
Before you change slides, I think you may have just created an awesome new thing to pursue for Kansas City's future, and that's the I Spy Childy game. Because you have a little Childy in there. I thought we could do all kinds of things with that.
Yes, this was my haphazard Photoshop job. So the purpose of this project would be to really create a retail pipeline of businesses that we help prepare to really take the next step. Maybe these are folks who have a hobby that they've been, they sell a little bit odds and ends, Etsy, their own website, what have you, but are looking to take the next step. We have a number of vacant storefronts downtown, particularly on the west end of downtown. And it's one of those mismatches where, our developers, our property owners, they want to finish these properties out. They want to get them rented, but they also maybe need to see proof of demand for those properties. And at the same time, we have folks with great business ideas, but they can't bet the farm on that idea. And so it stays as a hobby rather than becoming something full-time and something that really brightens our downtown with new businesses. So the idea with this retail incubator is that we'd be able to provide that space. It's also an opportunity to activate what is right now just a vacant lot. It's a high visibility lot downtown. It's direct access from the rail. It's something that's in our master plans to really make a pedestrian space, really make a people first kind of spot. And of course, improving the visual appeal of that gateway is a huge part of the mission. And like I said, through a lot of placemaking techniques, really want to encourage visitors to linger. The longer we encourage them to stay, the more they have good memories of the place and want to come back. So touching a little bit on kind of what I've talked about, right now it's just a parking lot in what is a really key gateway for us. It's got this beautiful clock tower. It's this fantastic piece of architecture, and I think that lot can really speak a lot more to that space. There's vacancies on 2nd and 3rd Street. And one of the reasons those stay vacant is the high barrier of entry. You don't necessarily, as a initial entrepreneur, have the capital to step in there, finish that space, to build the suit, and then also get started, get your inventory, all those pieces, plus high rent. And on the flip side of that, looking to property owners who really want to be able to rent their property out, seeing a proven business model is a really encouraging thing for them to then develop their properties and get them ready to rent. Again, this is something that's not necessarily a new idea. This is something that's been talked about in previous downtown plans, previous river corridor plans about incubating businesses, having a strong first impression, creating more event space, and having more retail. So that brings us to this idea of a multi-purpose pedestrian plaza that can serve not just as a retail incubator, but really a spot again for visitors to linger and have some space for arts and crafts demonstrations, for music, really make it a community gathering place. So the idea is, and this is something I'll get to a little later, that has been tried in other communities successfully, but you take custom sheds based on the lot. 5 8x16 sheds would sit on that south edge of the plaza. And these are custom built sheds. I actually reached out to Colorado Shed Company in Penrose. This is something they're interested in participating in. They can create facades that match the downtown character. So we're not just talking your garden variety garden shed. Something that really feels like it belongs and fits. And then you fill it out with picnic tables with umbrellas, so there's shaded places to sit. You have flowers or other kinds of greenery, yard games for the kids to play. You create space for music, for demonstrations, and really make it a place people want to spend some time. And this is just some of I've actually got from Colorado Shed Company. Those are solid numbers. Everything else is a little bit of back of the napkin estimates just to see where we would stand. That is also the 3D rendering that Colorado Shed Company provided as a proposal. The incubation idea really gets me excited. The idea being get these businesses, get these entrepreneurs into a space that they can afford at a low rate. You provide them the tools through resources like MICASA, through SBDC, through the Colorado Innovation Link. There's lots of training to make sure that they come in with a solid business plan, that they understand the financing options, that they really see how to grow in a controlled way that lets them turn this into a real business, not just a hobby. And again, this is the ultimate goal for us is, of course, they end up in a downtown vacant storefront. And so we provide them the tools to grow so that they grow out of this space and find a new space. And other communities, this is one way that they've done that, is to slowly increase those rates or to set a time limit. There's lots of different frameworks for how this could work. I think, and other communities do this differently, but I think something that would fit really well here is to really emphasize homemade, handcrafted sort of businesses, artisans and crafters, that kind of thing in that space. Make it something where people can experience local. And again, talking about some of those boot camps that organizations like MICASA and SBDC put on. One of the things that we've talked about is, helping create an atmosphere where you feel like you can get off work and go downtown and things are happening. There's shops to see. One of the pieces that other communities have said is, we will provide you this lower rate, we will provide you this training. In return, we want to ensure that you have core hours that include weekends, that include after typical business hours for the office workers and that kind of thing, to be able to experience it as well. Here's just some examples of some other places that have done very similar concepts. You might recognize in Tionestas, where I stole all my little images that I pasted into our lot there. Spoke with a couple folks from a couple of these communities. Larger cities have also done this. Cleveland, Jersey City, Kansas City, New Orleans, but wanted to sort of emphasize that this is something that can and has worked in smaller communities and rural communities as well. And of course, we need to be able to show that this is something that works and proof of concept here. So I see this, there's hard measurements that we can provide, and then there's more the qualitative, the feel here. And here's just some proposed ideas of how we can measure that. Foot traffic, sales tax receipts, how many events are we holding, what's the demand for these spaces, and of course, how many businesses are graduating out of these spaces. And that's what I've got for you.
And
And
we'll
I'd love to
start,
hear some questions and
and we'll
feedback.
start with Councilmember Gonzalez.
Great. I love this idea. I think it's really fantastic. So what I wanted to talk a little bit about were the core hours. That's come up before with downtown merchants. How do you, well, first I want to say that I think it's a great idea that core hours would be established in that area, because we have two fairly busy restaurants that are also open. Well, they're open on the weekends. And usually when you go down there, all there is to do after you eat is go home. So I think it's great that there might be some core hours in part of the trade-off in being able to rent a space down there. But how do you feel that might be accepted? Ryan, you've been through this before.
Well, I think, this is an incubation program. This is something that's would be city sponsored, and, we're taking applicants to get them the skills and the space to try and graduate them up into a brick and mortar storefront.
Sure.
So as part of the program requirements, I mean, that would be the core hours, that would be one of the requirements. And, I think the opposite side of that is we're trying to show and lead by example that core hours do have an effect, and there are positive effects to being open during these hours. And, so not only does it provide, leadership and growth opportunities for these new businesses, but it also gives us some data that we can lean back onto and show and demonstrate that core hours do have positive effects for other businesses as well.
I also agree. Thank you. Good.
Councilmember Reed.
I have too many things, so I'll try to prioritize a little bit. I love that idea. I'll start with that. Something on the core hour idea. I like how you said, because they're incentivized basically because it's part of this incubator concept. But that's something we should keep in the back of our minds for later. Maybe there's something there that we could look at for more Main Street businesses to incentivize. Anyway, so have you talked to FEDC, because they have mastered the concept of an incubator with TechStart? They've done, there's a lot of things. You've already seen this work really well with the FEDC incubators over on Valley. We've seen it extend over to the TechStart building here on Main Street. And so I don't know if you've already reached out to them to talk to them about how it's been so successful, but instead of reinventing the wheel, if you haven't, I would just encourage you, because they've got a pretty slick system going on that they've been able to do. The other thing is I would just add lighting, because lighting makes everything magical. And I didn't see it. I just saw the deer.
Oh, the only reason you don't see it more is because my Photoshop skills are bad, so I had to use not the
Okay.
brightest lights. But yes, I also want lights.
Yeah, lights are good. And then the other thing was for the concept of the incubator. Have you thrown around like timeframes for how long you'd want to see businesses inhabit those areas before they were they flew the coop?
Sure, and that's again one of those. There's a number of different frameworks depending on which community you talk to about how they've done this. Some are comfortable with them being there much longer term than I think we would necessarily want. But you talk about getting through a full season, say 8, 9 months in there, you take another season, and then maybe, and it's certainly something that we can increase or decrease as we all see fit. But 2 or 3 years is sort of where you've really established whether this is an idea that is going to take or not.
What I really love about that is it takes care of the revolving door issue, I guess, that we have on our main street. Like, we've got some really great key businesses, and then we have some that there's almost a stigma, like, well, what's going to be in this building next? And you get excited, but then like there's been 7 other businesses that you can think of that have been in that same spot. So this is so much less offensive if things don't work out, to be able to see some of those changes happen. Hopefully to be able to have more businesses that are those, long-term businesses on Main Street. So anyway, I love this idea, and I think your Photoshop skills were great. So good job, Tom.
Yeah, I expect to see I Spy Tilde in every PowerPoint from now on.
Started a trend.
If I can add to actually your comment in particular, but you mentioned incentive. Maybe think about incentive for existing businesses. This is part of a bigger picture. We're also talking about creating a training program, an e-commerce training program for certain businesses, and offer scholarships to some of these businesses that can't sell their product online to develop an e-commerce system. So we're thinking bigger picture, but this is, I give all the credit to him on this one, because this is an amazing idea for that location. Or even, we talked about possibly at Macon Plaza to do this, but then, as I said before, our mission is foot traffic. It's like, well, Macon Plaza is beautiful. It'd be nice to have something there, but really we want the businesses downtown, and we'd like to bring business more toward the west end, toward City Hall. And this is a really good way to generate some traffic down there. So yeah, I like your idea about the incentives, and we're working on that.
Councilmember Meisner?
Overall, yeah, I think you're on the right track, but have you talked to building and zoning about this?
Just the
serious.
engineer. Just the engineer. No.
Because what I see, and with my experience, and I don't want to be negative, that would never happen. So there has to be some obstacles to overcome to put in temporary buildings and run a business out of them on Main Street. So somebody's got to flip a switch somewhere.
Well, they just have to be built to spec and anchored into the
no.
ground. Is that what you're talking about?
We anticipate obstacles.
Okay.
Yeah, we do.
Huh?
Oh, you can change.
I've heard that.
Wow, Adam just said you're the king. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Or one more comment, I'm sorry. Just because this topic comes up all the time. We're taking parking away from one area. I know where I'll park, but just to re-clarify to the public, what other parking is available if we take this away?
We're continuing to work on parking, and hopefully we'll have some solutions to bring before council in the not too distant future.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
I just like to remind you that the as far as the murals go, that we do have the high school and PCC and through different contests that might be sponsored, you might be able to get something a lot cheaper than having a professional do it.
Sure.
Councilmember Smith.
First, I want to applaud you on this idea because I think it's a great idea. I probably talk to 12 people a month about, I have this idea for a business, but I don't really know where to start with it. So I think this is a great thing. I don't think parking will be as big of a deal, but I just want to commend you on this idea. I think it's great.
Thanks, and send those 12 folks our way.
I will.
Councilmember Jaquez.
The one thing I want to mention is the fact that of all the 3 projects that we've talked about, yours, in my opinion, is going to be the most challenging, but if it's done properly, like you're looking at it, it can be one of the most successful ones of the 3. Okay, just because of the way you're looking at it. You're looking at it with regards to not just businesses, you're looking at it with regards to the families, the hours of operation and all. Plus, you've got a tough spot where you want to do this. And, it's not the simplest place to look at. And of course, yeah, parking is going to be one of the projects, but maybe if we're successful with the laundromat and everything, and the cleaners over there, that's going to help in that area. But your concept is, like I say, the toughest, but I feel once it's done, will be the most successful one of the 3 projects that we're talking about. Because I feel you have, in a way, the most hurdles to overcome. But don't give up. Good job. And I like what you've shown so far. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dennehy.
Tom, I have a question just for you, and because you mentioned, you showed up those up in Westcliff. Now, are you looking at having any restaurants? Because I know in the ones in Westcliff, I mean, the ice cream store's there on the corner, and are you looking at bringing in is there going to be any food in any of these, or no? No.
So many of those, many of the other communities you look and they have things like bakeries, again, kind of homemade goods.
Okay.
Fudge, chocolates, those kind of things. There's, I think there's definitely a place for that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, in Westcliff, I mean, as you brought that up, the one on the corner there, the ice cream place does sandwiches and that too. But I didn't know if that was also a concept that that you're looking at in this area as well, with the picnic tables and that.
Yeah, I think that is certainly something that this idea can accommodate if that's an entrepreneur who comes forward.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
What about food trucks on weekends?
I think everyone loves food trucks.
And I'm just saying that because some really key words you said were linger longer. And to linger longer, a really key part of that is food. And I love food. And to be able to so that is an important thing, I think, for a lot of people. And that's actually included in the Centennial Park Master Plan, was access to food. And so it might be something to consider.
And I also think that's another advantage of this lot is that there are 2 great anchor restaurants there that, people already love and respect and visit regularly. And so that's, it's really nice idea to be able to drive more traffic that way from visitors as well.
But something new from food trucks on weekends could be fun too.
Absolutely.
Or on special events. Also in the realm of lingering longer is to have comfortable seating as well. And my truest desire is to have a little tiny splash pad and a little something for the kids to play on. And so, because I know the splash pad at Centennial Park is a crazy huge success. And also in the Centennial Park Master Plan was a little tiny splash pad as well. And that's another place of where families can just gather and spend time and enjoy and spend money. And so I love that. And I know we might need to get grant money to go that far because I know that is really expensive, but I also have some money from Black Hills if we want to dig into it. That would be up to council to think about that. And then I was with public restrooms, might be a consideration, and interactive art. And I was also thinking about the lights. And so whether if it's if we had some of the street lights, like smaller street lights that we already have on Historic Main Street that have the hanging flower baskets, would be really cool. And then the patio lights too, would be really awesome atmosphere for the evenings and weekends.
And one thing I didn't mention somehow is that there actually may be some grant opportunities through CDOT. They currently have a revitalizing Main Street grant opportunity, and they've funded very similar things already. And they have something like 4 million available, which isn't very much across the state, but it's certainly an opportunity.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So basically, I too love the idea. I'm really excited about it. And Ryan, didn't you mention that there could possibly be some of the COVID money in the next stimulus package that could go towards getting this kickstarted?
Potentially. It's hard to speculate on legislation that hasn't been passed.
Potentially. Okay, I see that keyword. Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
And so continuing with the idea of thinking outside the box, another thing that was a favorite of our previous mayor was charging stations. And so, maybe in the 3rd Street right of way or something like that, if there were 2 or 3 or 4 charging stations, that might be a real big magnet for people that if we believe the talk that we're hearing out of Washington, D.C., everybody's headed towards electric cars. So that might be something to consider.
Councilmember Reed.
So you just mentioned charging stations, which made me think maybe it's not quite the right format, but didn't we have to get rid of a lot of the plugins and things like that at the parks because they were being used by like the homeless and things like that at night? Or we locked them up, is that what it was? Anyway, so if you add that in there, you might just consult and do what we did at the parks. That way we don't have issues. Because I just heard make it really comfortable seating and make sure there's electricity. So I kind of felt like it became like a call. So I just wanted to make sure that we had some solutions to some of those things.
Too much lingering.
Right, right. Lingering longer and spending money.
Councilmember Smith.
This was on my mind last time, but I totally forgot it, but I remembered it, so we're good. Since its conception, the clock tower has always been something kind of special to me. I worked at Doritos when they were building it. Multiple family members of mine have bricks with their names on it on the clock tower, and I think it's been super under realized or under appreciated over the years, and I'm really glad to see that it be like an object of focus, I guess is what you want to call it. So I really think it's important that we spent the time and the money, and so many people have their names on those bricks. I think it's important that we move forward on this.
Awesome. Councilmember Jaquez.
How big is the lot?
I should have that written down, but I don't. I know it's
Okay,
90 feet
and the only reason I'm
across the
asking,
back.
and the only reason I'm asking this question is because of we've a whole bunch of stuff with regards to putting certain things in there.
Sure.
The mayor brought you enough stuff that would fill probably a 5 square blocks worth of stuff. Not
said
saying that they aren't, that's not saying that they aren't good ideas, but I'm saying that we only have so much space to work on with that lot there. And so that should be the #1 consideration with regards to the future of what we put into that lot with regards to that, so that we get the best bang for the location and everything we're looking at it for. So the size of that lot is very, very important, because I know it's not that big, and it's not big enough to have everything that, all of us would like to see there. So that's why I mentioned that you've got the toughest of all 3 projects. So good work,
Well, I
and
like a
keep it up.
challenge.
It's just
Yeah,
under a quarter
It is tough
acre.
because all my deepest desires are into this, but they're tiny. Mayor Pro Tem Meisner. Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
I was just going to respond to Councilwoman Reed's comment about the charging station. What I meant were vehicle charging stations, not cell phone charging stations.
Councilmember Mercer, I think we've wrapped up this subject. You said you had something else?
I have a question on this subject. That's why I did on the light. My question was probably more towards Adam. I noticed that lift in there.
It's an existing,
Yeah, from the old car shop and all that. Yeah, I mean,
What's the contamination possibilities?
I don't think any, and we're not talking about doing anything that's not
Yeah,
on
but
the,
you just can't pull that out. there,
on the
can you?
surface. I think the actual lift is gone. I thought it was just the concrete.
There might be a
Yeah.
tube or
concrete
something
on
there.
there.
Yeah,
I think
There's
there's a
concrete
cylinder
lip
there.
or
there might be a little something there
I know
that we can
when
bury.
we were in Pueblo, we just couldn't pull the cylinder.
Maybe we'll just bury it.
Oh, there you
Okay.
go.
It'll be under the fountain, the water
Well,
fountain.
we need to check into that.
Infrastructure for the water fountain.
Because if there's a cylinder in there,
Yeah, that's where the water fountain goes.
that's just not a simple pull out
All right,
at night.
Ryan Stevens.
I have one thing that's not related if you're ready to move on.
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to let council and everybody know that Commander Husky had his surgery today. He made it out without any complications.
Oh, good.
So we're hoping for a speedy recovery for him.
Thank you for that update. I really appreciate that. Did you have something unrelated as well?
Yes. This is maybe directed at you, but I still have this ill feeling about the approval of the lot for the fire department and why that lot had to be divided into 3 lots. What's the reasoning there?
It didn't have to be divided into 3 lots. We did very early on when the fire district was looking at that lot. We did mention that, there's a lot of commercial frontage there and it'd be nice to see commercial there. And they brought forward a plan that had some commercial lots to the frontage of it.
And you think that was an appropriate recommendation?
I think that when they were looking at it and, the desire and, the question was, what do you want to see on these properties? Commercial was, along Highway 50, that's the key commercial area. So yes.
My concern comes with another community support agency acquiring a piece of property and then having to turn over that property essentially to the city to meet the commercial needs of the city. That doesn't sit well with me.
Are you saying there was arm twisting and?
Well, no, because nobody will admit it, but we all know how those processes work.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't a requirement,
Right,
that
which
was,
they acknowledged also, but it also complicates their plan and their access in terms of what can or can't happen there. And it also complicates what types of businesses can be in those 2 spots. But the bottom line is, we had another public entity, not company, but organization that had to sacrifice part of the lot that they paid for their purpose to meet the commercial needs of the city.
Well, that's quote, sacrifice means selling that land and making some money back for their entity. I mean, that may have been a part of their motivation. We can't make that either.
and that's,
assumption.
that's certainly something that we discussed with them as well, is that the lots could be potential ways to make money back for the purchase, towards the purchase price of the lot that they purchased.
All
There,
right.
there were also other considerations that we talked about specifically in regards to that lot and how it sits in the floodplain and critical access facilities and the additional things that they have to do from a federal standpoint. So, there were a lot of conversations about that particular site, not just the commercial frontage of it.
I believe this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you.